What's going on, everyone? This is Brady Harrington, and you are listening to the Pump Podcast. Pump stands for Prepare Ultimate Mental Performance. This episode is brought to you by Hoop Culture. Hoop Culture is your off-the-court, unique and authentic basketball streetwear. You can use our 10% off code HCFAM-pump. I repeat, HCFAM-pump to receive 10% off your next order. If you have any questions after the episode or you want to reach out for new ideas, please reach out to Harrington, HARRINGTON, pump@gmail.com, or you can reach out to our Instagram page, PUMP_pod. I really appreciate you giving this a listen. Hope you enjoy. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. We have the season finale, and this is very exciting. Episode 20, we're going to do 20 episodes, get to a new season just to break things up a little bit. This one right here, it's funny to think about because I mentioned what this guy talks about all the time. I give him the copyright, and now he's going to finish this off with a bang. The beginning of the Pump Pod, Season 1, Casey Mcgraw. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing well. I don't know if it's really copyright or if it's more like you might get in trouble for it, so you're just blaming it on me. Like it kind of takes the responsibility out of what you're repeating. But
there you go. Yeah, I had to bring someone with me on whatever I say.
Nonetheless, I respect it. It's an honor to be here.
Absolutely, thank you. But now I'm excited to wrap things up. It's been a fun journey, and thank you to everyone who's tuned in, giving some feedback. That's like the whole point of just want. Guys like me and you, we see it every day, and it's good to like talk about just all the mental stuff that goes on, really. Yeah, whoever can, you're listening, Spotify, YouTube, full episodes, and then all the short clips that are out there, and shoot us an email too if you need anything, or even just give your input because, yeah, that interaction, I love it. But yeah, let's finish out with a bang. And for starters, I obviously wrapped up my second year with you, and from there on, I obviously got to learn a lot, be a sponge, and bringing everything you've done. Big thing there's a lot, but one thing that I want to start everything with is you also started. This is your first head coaching gig. At Elmira, wrapping up fourth year. Our core values: trust, compete, embrace. Give me a little background, just where each one came from and the importance of them.
Yeah. And I should say that we have core values. Most teams I've been on don't have core values. Like I think I think it's one of those things that if you feel like you're just doing it because everyone else is doing it, that's probably not a good reason. I think coming from such a different place than Elmira College, it was important to have some very core values that it didn't matter where you were or the situation you were in or the type of coaches you had or players you had. These things matter, but they also need to kind of intersect with your own core values. Like I'm not the most retrospective. I don't write out my core values once a month and track what's important to me at any given time. But when you're interviewing for head coaching jobs, you start thinking about these things because you're going to get asked about it. And I think the three things of trust, compete, embrace, a lot of it came from me looking at the guys we had at Nebraska Westland. I was unbelievably lucky to sit there and watch those guys every day, the coaches and the players, for 4 years. And I think they had the best trust I've ever seen within a team. I think we bring it up to every recruit and we say, you got to trust each other on a basketball team. You got to trust, and every kid understands that, but not every team demonstrates it. And I think that was the most important thing. Was there was guys who maybe didn't get along, or guys who didn't like each other, or didn't like me as a coach, or didn't like one of the other coaches. But at the end of the day, we all trusted each other. And I think that was a big part. The compete aspect. Those guys competed every single day. It was unbelievable. In the summer, they do internships a lot of time in Lincoln because it's a fun place to be and there's plenty of opportunities. They go to the internship, they come lift get a workout in or whatever, and then they'd play frisbee golf for like 2 hours and talk the most trash you've ever seen, and like genuinely get like fired up over like anything. It was hard to design drills there because they would always be trying to find a way
Yeah, they're getting
around
after
the
each other no
drill.
matter what.
No
Yeah.
matter what, they got to win. Like they didn't care. So it was like Dale had his hands filled creating drill. Like that team just loved to compete. And like we talk about competitive stamina a lot. It can't be a short term stamina. You know, it's not like competing for 40 minutes throughout a game. Like that's hard enough, but it's like competing for months on end. And then like, you know, you go become a professional. Like you never stop competing. There is no season. There is no practice, 2 hour practice. Like you got 9 to 5 every day. You know, finding kids who really want to compete and understand that. And then the embrace part, I think, is I've been on good teams and bad teams, and the best teams, obviously there's a talent element, there's a coaching element, there's all those other things that matter, but like the reaction to bad things or good things really is a big separator, you know. And even when we had some talented teams at Nebraska Wesleyan that we maybe felt underachieved, like it was those young teams that didn't know how to like embrace a little bit of adversity. You know, they hadn't experienced that yet. You know, I watched those guys go from, you know, every week our first year not getting top 25 votes, not getting top 25 votes. And it gets to a point where we're like, I don't know, 27-3 or something, and they still don't have any top 25 votes. And, you know, and so they have this underdog mentality. They go, that carries them to a national championship. And then the next 2 years is the exact opposite. Like, now all of a sudden everyone's telling you you're great, and you know there is no one, you're the one being chased, there's no one to chase anymore. And watching them not change one bit, you know, their approach to things didn't change one bit, you know, that is really what impressed me the most, is like whether they embrace the good or the bad, they went with it. So when I got to Elmira College, I just felt like those were three things that on the court needed to be reflected. You know, none of those things really have anything to do with talent. And then just from a life expect, like I think everyone knows you got to be a good team to trust. Like, I want to have trusted guys. Like, when you leave our program, like, I want people to be like, I trust that guy, you know, and I want you to know who to trust and who not to trust, because whatever you go into, that's a big part. So there's a day-to-day element in that. We talk about competing all the time. Like, it doesn't matter if you're in sales or whatever, like, you're going to have to compete. You go buy a house, you're competing against someone else to buy that house and put together the best offer. Like, you better learn to love that. And then I think the embrace one is the most obvious. Like, life's a roller coaster, it's going to go up and down. So when creating those core values, it was really like, what's the most important thing on the court? What's the most important thing that I want them to take with them? And then lastly, like, what part can I reflect? Like, I can't just pick the three best things and do it. Like, I have to look myself in the mirror, like, what three things can you act out on a day-to-day basis, and recruit kids who fit to that to ultimately work.
Yeah, and that was like the biggest thing too. I feel like with some programs they just want to come up with 3 or 4 like big buzzwords and just have them out there. But like when you actually experience it and you see it and you just go through the whole, you get years on years end of going through that. And when you actually follow through on that and those 3 top words that come through, it's like, okay, like there's a reason where it comes from. It's not just, all right, I'm going to put up a couple words. Hopefully that'll motivate you. Like the believe from Ted Lasso, like stuff like that. Like there's a reason why he put it up there in that show, because that came from some other type of background. So I think the most productive core values is not just kind of like a half-assed, okay, these are some good words, I think they're good. Like, no, what did I experience in my past as a player and as a coach that this what got me here today? So now I'm gonna pass that on.
Right. And like, I think we've done a good job. I think there's always a way to like find a way you can be better. But the big thing with our Corvette is like we talk about it in some way every day. And that we have them when we break it down. Like, you have a choice, whoever we call on, like, you have a choice to say trust, compete, or embrace. Like, what one are we going with? And in that moment, every one of them thinks about like, what do we need right now? Like, are we having a slow practice right now? Do we need to pick it up a little bit? All right, compete on 3. Like, is it one of those things that we just lost 3 games in a row? It's been a grind. Like, no, we got to embrace it. Whatever it is, maybe we just had a really hard practice. Trust it. And just kind of having that, even just that quick little second of, remembering what our values are and what do we need right now.
Yeah, I think that's what the biggest part that makes it the most effective is during those times of adversity, you can fall back on that. Like, hey, what's our identity? What are we made of? And what do we do? So no, it's a good thing for players to take in as well, listening to this, is that, go back to your foundation when things are when you're in the trenches and middle of the season and you're catching that 3-4 game losing skid. All right, what got us here? What has made us successful, and what do we believe in that can get us by?
Right. And like I think a lot of teams have identities, and like that's what they at the end of the day go, but your team identity changes sometimes. Like there's injuries or whatever, like there's a deeper thing that you have to lean on a little bit, and that's you as a person. That's your team as a collective unit. Like that's what you need to find. It's not always basketball related. Like at the end of the day, your confidence comes from like who you are as a person and what in the work you've put in and everything. And like I think it's far more important to have that sort of identity than it is necessarily a basketball identity. Not to say it's not important, but if I'm choosing between the two, I'm choosing the one that understands who they are as a unit, as people.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's great. And going back to your Nebraska Wesleyan teams of being the underdogs all year, winning the national championship, and then the following year, having that target on your back. It's crazy how it's all about how you perceive it, but it's crazy how much almost like enjoyable it is to be in that. Okay, like we're still under the radar. We know how good we are, and that attention's not really on us, but boom, there we go. And then once like you're going to get every team's best shot once you're like a top 5 team, or have that nationally known attention. It's just like it kind of like after a while, especially like looking at the D1 schools, that preseason top 5, like I think Kansas was number 1 in the preseason top 5, and I think they're not, yeah, like, and now look where they ended up. They're outside the top 25, and just like I don't, like, maybe you have something on this, but what's like the best insight to have on being that team with the target on your back? Because I've not really had too much of that from my experience, but there's got to be some type of way, like in regards to like positivity and how you can give your best every time and stay on top of things. When Kentucky went 31-0 or anything like that, I'm like, how can you manage to do that? I know how talented they were. That's one thing, but like 31-0, there's a couple of games where they had terrible performances, but they still found a way. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Get by with that target on your back.
Yeah. I think as coaches, it's easy because as coaches, like you win by 30 and like you still find 12 possessions you're ticked about.
You can still work on. Yep.
I think for coaches, it's easy. I think for players, again, like I don't have a ton of experience in this. I have like
Yeah.
one major experience and one group that I worked with. But I think that group understood the element of the reason they got there, and while I think they also had a ton of respect for, like when you go under the radar all year, win a national championship, you fully know how little being ranked number 1 in the country means. Like they had a certain level of respect for that, I think, and they knew that that first round of the NCAA tournament we watched the year before, watch you lose. It was they were number 2 in the country, and they lost in the first round at their place. So like when we had that same situation the next year, like no one was taking that lightly. No one, we'd seen it with our own eyes a little bit. So I think when you experience that, you know how little it matters. I think UConn is kind of similar. Like I know they had a bad year this year, but like I feel like if you go to UConn, you watch Kemba Walker, you watch Ryan Boatwright, like you've watched teams that are 8 seeds or whatever that go on to win. Like you understand, you respect it. So I think there's an element of like once you've seen it all, you have an appreciation for those teams that maybe aren't as impressive on paper or anything like that. Like you understand what got you there, and you understand how quickly that can be ripped away.
Yeah. Don't get me going on the Big East back then. Like right when I
Well,
just heard
your
that,
Big East
game.
back your Big East
Yeah.
back then is different than most people's Big East back then. But yeah,
Yeah. My back then was those early 2000s and all the way up until they got disbanded. Yeah, I'm gonna those shivers. I just had to explain that why I just got a couple goosebumps hearing a Big East team. But cool. Another thing I want to touch on: you coming from a heavily basketball oriented family on the dark side and the good side. I feel like there's another thing too for you. It goes even further back from let's just say freshman year all the way, your college playing experience, and then just seeing other teams like from family members reffing, brothers playing, etc. I think you have a very good feel on what it takes to be in regards to being a role player and impacting the best you can at what you're good at. Like you mentioned to me before, how good your high school team was, what you had to do to be effective with the minutes you have and with college as well. So, in regards to role identification, what are a couple of insights you want to give to coaches and players on just how to identify it? Because I think the thing that trips me up a little bit sometimes is that you can set a role on a kid, like either have like an individual meeting, you talk about on the side, but say if that kid's ceiling's a little higher though than expected, and but his or her role is limiting what they can do because, hey, this is what's going to get you on the court, stick to this. But say if you put them on another team, they can do this, and that a whole lot better than maybe the person that has like kind of like a higher up role. So, yeah, what's your insight on just role identification overall?
Yeah. And I think it's the hardest thing right now. It's
Oh
the
yeah.
hardest and
Oh
probably
my
the
God.
most
Yeah.
important thing to accomplish as a coach. I think probably 85% of coaches, no matter the level, don't succeed in it the way they probably would have
Yeah.
liked to. At the end of
Yeah.
the year, like I think most coaches probably are like, we struggled with this. And I think part of it's gotten tougher with, and honestly, the way we play is a good example of, 10, 15 years ago, there was one or two shooters on the floor. There was one or two big guys on the floor. There was a point guard. Like that's what it was. Now, everyone's kind of positionless. Like
Mm-hmm.
most guys are
You can get
scoring.
whatever lineup in you want.
Right. You play at the Division 3 level. Like there's a lot of really good shooters at Division 3. It's a lot of those super skilled guys that, aren't overly athletic, but they're skilled and they can shoot. So all of a sudden you have five guys on the floor who are scorers. And that's what you want as a coach, but it's kind of hard to then identify like, all right, well, who's going to score? And that's where I think it's more about, yes, you have to tell players what their role is, but they need to realize what their role is a little bit and understand it. And I think we kind of backdoor it a little bit in the way we talk about roles, and that we pitch it more as like, what are you great at? Like whatever you're good at, be great at it, because ultimately that's what's going to get you, like what's going to get you in the game. If you're our best rebounder, at some point we're going to be like, we need our best rebounder in the game. If you're our best shooter, like at some point we're going to say we need our best shooter in the game. And I think that gives them, the power of, you can be the best rebounder in the game but also still be a threat. If you're open from three, the way we run offense, we kind of need you to
You
shoot
got to knock that
the,
down. You got to, yeah, it's got to be respected.
right. We didn't recruit you. We wouldn't recruit someone who we didn't think could ever make a jump shot. So,
Mhm.
um, I think it's a lot more of like, you still have to find those little small parts that makes them great, and almost treat shooting and scoring for most teams as everyone can. That's an expectation.
That should be there.
Everyone can do that. We need to play a couple guys who can create for others, a couple guys who can rebound, a couple guys who can really defend. I think that's kind of how we go about it, more so than like, this is your role. It's more of, let's get all the guys who can do something really well. Let's get them doing that really well, and put them on the floor.
Yeah, no, that's a good point of it. And now that I think about it, I think that's one of the coolest things a part of basketball in general. Because if you look at other sports, baseball, football, even like hockey and a little bit of soccer, like yeah, there's positions, but you know what their role is. Because like if you're baseball, you're a pitcher. You got to do what you got to do. You're football, you're quarterback, you're wide receiver. It's pretty self-explanatory what you got to do. You might be a little different, like the type of player you are, but in basketball, it is all over the place. And that's what, in my opinion, distinguishes. If you look at the past 20 champions on the NBA and college side, I think they figured out pretty well what their roles were. Maybe a couple teams got by with just an insane amount of talent or those one, two, good players that get you. But like basketball is the true definition of roles. And there's so many of them that you have to see through. And I think it's the coolest part about the game, but also like the toughest thing coming from a coach's perspective.
Oh, it's definitely the toughest thing, especially now where, you know, you're just seeing a lot of teams, you know, particularly at the Division 1 and 2 level, like you have a whole new roster every year. It's hard to figure out roles really, really
And
quick.
how long does it take? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like, you know, the way we kind of run our program, we typically get 2, 3, 4 years out of a kid. So it kind of it helps them figure it out a little bit what their role might be. But no, it's only going to get harder to figure that out because the sense of urgency is just so rapid.
Yeah, yeah. So no, that was like a good one. I wanted to especially run by you because there's like so many directions you can take with it. And I've asked this before too, and it's just like I like getting different sides of it because that's what makes basketball special. Of there's also if you don't succeed at your role, then that could bring you on a lower spot. But also if you exceed very well and you show a couple glimpses of what else you can do, that's pretty good. And that's why I know you're a fan, but that's why I think the Celtics are going to go back to back because they're just so solidified at everything they have. And like any given night, even when they're not, I know like their one biggest knock is that if they're not making their threes, they're at some games not doing too well. But like all the guys through and through, like 1 through 10, it's pick your choose and whatever lineup you want to put in, those guys know what they need to do.
Yeah, and I always wonder if it's like easier or harder at that level because it's
Yeah,
obviously
me too.
hard.
Me too.
It's harder because you have, I mean, the egos of all egos. You're coaching NBA players, you know, like everyone is rightfully so pretty confident in
Yeah,
themselves.
yeah.
But you also have an element of like you get paid based on your role, basically. Like, you know, if you're a catch and shoot shooter and this year you make 17 to 22 million dollars, like that's what you're signed to do. You
hmm
know, you're a
hmm
rebounding big, you make $28 million a year now.
Yeah, I think Duncan Robinson was like the real damn. This dude literally got paid this much, and he can just spray the three.
And
That's what
and
he did.
that's oh now if that's just the going price for a guy
Yeah, yeah. Now
like
that
him,
like sets the standard.
you kind of have a built in, you know, this is what
hmm
your role
hmm
is. That's what we paid you to do. No, I mean, I think at, you know, the high school, junior college, Division 3, Division 2, like it's an absolute challenge every year. But that's the fun part of it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So sticking with the program a little bit, I touched on a little bit just you starting the program with the core values 4 years ago. What were some things you realized, and maybe even just from experience now, talking with other coaches and seeing other programs, and even this could be for the players too, like being a part of the start of like kind of like a new like rebuild. What are the what are the do's and don'ts of starting your program? Like obviously like high school, college, like first year, and you need to obviously the big buzzword culture, and everything's gonna change no matter what. Like things can change at whatever level. Like we mentioned, like one player leaves, one assistant coach leaves, or manager leaves, the culture changes. But like whole new clean slate, head coach, and now like even like that's why it was crazy that like the Nuggets, for example, fired Malone 4 games before the playoffs. But yeah, what are some things that you realize? Okay, there's a great way like just get the foundation going, but like also okay, maybe not this or this didn't help me at all.
I mean, I think the biggest thing is like have a plan and trust it. Like be a little bit stubborn in that first year, a little bit. You know, if you have the luxury of like, you know, if you're an interim position, like you got to win, you know, you got to prove it or whatever. But like in most cases, your first year, like you're probably building something up a little bit. So, you know, be stubborn. Like you're probably not going to go win 20 games that first year anyway or overachieve. Like have a way and stick to it to an extent. Obviously, like learn and adjust a little bit, but be your own critic, be your own judge. Like that first year, like you're gonna have a lot of people in your ear, which is normally, you know, a good thing. Like people trying to help and giving you advice or whatever.
Yeah,
But like
it almost shows too that they see something. Yeah, like if they don't show you that attention, then they already gave up on you.
right, like be a sponge, hear what they have to say, but when it comes to you dictating whether you did a good job or not, like be your own. You're going to be tough on yourself. Like if you're in a head coaching position, you're probably pretty tough on yourself. So, you know, be your own judge because I think that kind of reveals the things that like you know you can do better. You know, if you're if you're looking at your program after year one and it's like, I didn't do a great job of this, that's probably something that's like, I know I need to get better at that. That's not someone who watched 3 games and is telling me, what I need to do better. Someone who
Yeah.
watched the games but isn't at practice, or, be your own judge. No one's more engulfed in it than you that first year. And that's not to say like, don't listen to other people. Like there's a ton you don't know. There's a ton I don't know. I'm 4 years in. I know I got a lot to learn.
Yeah. Yeah.
So by no means am I saying you know everything, but you have to keep it simple that first year and really just buy in on what your vision is. Like you got hired for a reason. They gave you that job to go do what you pitched them on doing. So don't do anything but that, like stick to what you planned on doing your first year and be your own judge. And the other thing I would say is don't be afraid to say you don't have the answer. You're not going to know everything. I think being vulnerable is a huge part of being a leader in today's world right now. Like we're all humans. We all have goods and bads, and you don't want to tell them every single day, oh, I screwed up, I screwed up, I screwed up, because then it's like, well, dude, all you do is screw up. But if you screw up once every 2 or 3 weeks, I screwed up. You know what I mean? Like be vulnerable, be honest with them, because I think that matters a lot more than thinking you're not going to be right every single time. I think it's okay to just be like, I don't know the answer right now, but let's figure it out together.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, right when you said that too, actually, I remember I asked you last year. I had like half court with the guys before. I came to you. I'm like, hey, coach, like we gotta watch the film, but I think like halfway through this, there's a part that I showed them like this the wrong way, or it was like one little like glimpse with like it obviously affected, and I wanted to make sure they knew the proper way. And you're like, dude, like tell them my bad, fix it, obviously, but yeah, I think people are really starting to realize more and more that it is like like, hey, we get it. Like don't say it too much, and don't mess up too much. But because I don't think it was the same. Like I think a lot of, especially with coaching, I feel like a lot of people just want to constantly be right and have everything go the way it should be. But if you don't take any positives away, or if you're not vulnerable, like you said, it has to wear at you after a while. I can only imagine like how long that could ride on you for.
Yeah, but I mean, Dylan Jacob, who's now an assistant coach with us and is doing a really good job. Like he was my point guard for 3 years. The amount of times that I ended a conversation with "good question," he'd come up to me and be like, "Hey, coach, like blah blah blah." Like, good question, Dylan. What do you think? Let's figure it out. Like I don't really have an answer for you. And I think it probably ended up giving us the best answer because he got his opinion. Year one, I'd get Coco's opinion or whoever the other person was. And,
Yeah.
we figure something out rather than me just being like, I have to have an answer right now. Let's do this. And then,
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't the right way to do it. Like, I'd rather just like figure it out together than jump to a conclusion whether you think it's right or wrong, without thought.
Yeah, definitely. And that actually sparked something else for me when you mentioned that. I think the level of communication with asking the questions and it being a democracy and not a dictatorship, where's like the fine line for you? So I also agree. I think it's great that, the player involvement on just what goes on with the team in general. Like, hey, coach, like I'm seeing this on the court right now. Maybe I think we should maybe go to this play or run this for a possession. Where's like the cutoff line of, I think like the way you word it is one thing that's like, hey, coach, like, what are you doing? Like, why are we not running this? Okay. Yeah, we're not. I'm not going to listen to you when you talk to me. Like, don't talk to your coach like that. But I've been curious to see like with these programs that are getting to a high level, where are they at with their player coach communication and how much intake they receive from their players? What do you have on that?
Yeah, no, it's a good point because there is a fine line, I think.
Yeah, you can't let them just walk all over you, obviously, and run the
Right.
team.
I think generally speaking, as a coach, you have to have things you care about and things you don't care about,
Mm-hmm.
meaning more off the court for the most part. Like, I don't care what we do in warm up as long as we're ready to go. Like, you guys create the warm up, whatever it is, things like that. I think you've got to be realistic with yourself. There's certain things that I've got pet peeves. This has to be done, this way. But you have to find that give and take as a coach. And sometimes in the flow of a game, I don't care what we run right now. Like we're getting good stuff out of different actions. Like, what do you guys think? When not to say you only ask them when it doesn't matter, but you ask them when it feels appropriate. There's times, we're never going to get in a huddle with 30 seconds to go. And I'm going to say, what do you guys want to run?
Yeah. What do we want to do here, boys?
Like ask them, when it makes sense. And when you think like, all right, like this can give them a little bit, with some of those good teams, we wouldn't call a single thing for a half, and it'd be the second half. We'd be up by 35. And it's like, all right, we got to get them to think because now we're just being sloppy and whatever. So like,
Yeah.
it was a way for them to kind of think and challenge themselves a little bit. But there is a competitive aspect of it. Like, I don't want to make it sound like I only do it just to throw them a bone or keep them interested. Like, there's competitive times in a game that, my point guard's going to come grab me and say, hey, I think we should run this. And, I think those point guards know who they are, and they've built that relationship with us, and they've seen it. And, they've built up a track record in practice sometimes where, I won't be calling anything out. They'll be going up and down, and he'll see something. And, what? I'm like, what? That's like a quarterback. He's just directing traffic right now. He sees the matchups. Like, Carter Seaberger's earned that right to me. I don't think I've shaken off Carter more than 10% of the time.
Yeah.
That he comes to me with something to run because I trust what he has to say. And, when Riley looks at me and gives me the hand signal, I'm usually saying yes. Yeah. I mean, I'm usually going with it. So I think it's more of a timing thing and, a relationship that you build with guys. If you're a first year center that doesn't know the offense and starts telling me to run something, I'm probably going to
Exactly.
say thanks and go a different direction.
Yeah, and that's another reason why having a solid point guard is just that much more important of having that on the court coach. So, yeah, no, I've always and like, was this confirmed that the Maryland head coach actually asked his team in the huddle, "Hey, who wants the ball here?" when they hit that game winner against Baylor?
I have no idea.
It's like that was like another thing. I'm like, is that too far? Like, you just talked about like 30 seconds left. Hey guys, what do you want to do? If he legitimately who the hell knows, but from what I've read and seen, hey guys, who wants the ball here? Or like what do we want to do here? And like obviously like that like it hit that runner. This is March Madness, and he has that question.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you've got the threats to do it, and you feel good about like whoever raises their hand, we can
Like
get
who's feeling it? Yeah, who really wants it? Yeah.
Then yeah, when I use the variable of confidence, see who wants it. But yeah, no, that's gutsy.
Yeah, because then like say if you had like three guys at the same time raise their hands, like, oh shit, here we go. Like I thought about the from the like when I got like fire tuned like from the Jordan doc when they talked about when Kukoc hit that game winner and Pippen won the ball and Phil Jackson, basically like did he sub him out or like he just told him like, this is what we're going with. It's like the two exact opposite things. Like anything Phil says goes. And he won Kukoc, he ran the play for Kukoc, and Pippen wasn't happy about it. But then you got the whole other side of the spectrum when the Maryland coach like, all right, who wants it? And it's like, oh my God.
Yeah. And to be fair, we do it as head coach, we do it with our assistants all the time. Like we'll get to the clipboard and I might look at you guys. I mean, Dale used to do it with us all the time. Like we used to do it with you. I do it with you guys. Like, all right, what do you guys want to run? And usually one gives one and one gives the other. And
you take that. That's the point. Yeah, that's a good point of it too. It's like you get different perspectives, and obviously whatever you says goes at the end, but you get two different angles or more.
Right. And when I go with Brady 3 times in a row and they're all good looks, it's like, all right, Brady's earned a little bit of like
Brady's hot.
Brady's hot. Let's go with him. Let's go with him. Or get him out of the game now. Let's get him out now.
Yeah. Brady just ran a bullshit elevator screen here for moving.
Percentages are percentages for a reason. He's gonna come
back. Yeah. I feel like I think Synergy should start looking into that now. You kind of give hand signals on which coach drew up that play, and they check that off. All right, they got good look out of this. See which one we go with. Yeah, no, I because that was the thing too. Like close games, you sometimes like actually see the associate head coach, the assistant, like take the clipboard and draw something up. And I'm like, one, that's a serious amount of trust that the head coach has given them. And I think younger me, like more immature me, was like, oh, does like the head coach not have something here? Like what's going on? But it's more just along the lines of there's a reason why you had that support staff.
Yeah, and there's a hilarious video of it was in the Elite Eight, and that situation happened. I think there was maybe 13 seconds left. We were down by 1, and we call a timeout. And Dale's like, "What do you want to run?" And Trevor, says what it was, and we went with it. And Shim hits a ridiculous buzzer beater, and like the time goes out or whatever. And I slapped Trevor Johnson on the ass harder than I've ever hit someone in my entire life, because it was an ISO for Nate Shimonitz, so it wasn't exactly
Nothing too crazy, but
we weren't hiding our deck too much, but
no.
he did the right thing. And that was one of the coolest moments there. It was just like, God, Trevor just called the play to send us to the Final Four. Like, imagine that, sending your alma mater to the Final Four. That must have been a great feeling for him.
Yeah, now I get that feeling. He's in that 1 percentile right there.
Absolutely.
So kind of the last thing before we just kind of break off into just general topic, I just want to talk one more thing about like the program and what you do. Synergy. I just mentioned it actually, and just like effective breakdown of what you do. And I thought about just like film in general, like obviously the same thing. You have your support staff to help with that, break things down, give scouting report. But for the players, what's like a good, like when you're watching game film, when you're watching practice film, what are some things that they should be looking for and not just kicking back and watching and not really taking anything in?
So, like, from a player point of view?
Yeah, we'll go player point of view here.
Yeah, I mean, I think the simple thing is like track your good possessions and your bad possessions. Like, did I turn it over there? Did I get 2 feet in the paint, kick it out, find an open guy? I missed that layup. I made that layup. And then kind of going through. So now you got your good clips and your bad clips, and then starting to find what are the trends within those. Whether it's offensively and defensively. I got blown by 3 times. All right, what are those bad possessions? You look and it's like, oh, I was way out of position. Like that's the common denominator. So that's what I'd like to say I did as a player. I don't know if I do that much as a player, but that's what I would do as a player is go through. That's pretty much what we do from a team element is like, all right, good possessions, bad possessions. What are the common themes? And then what's the one thing I can take from that film session? You're not going to look at one game as a player, look at your good possessions, bad possessions, and then just be like, all right, I got to change everything based off that. It's like, no, find one thing maybe on each side of the floor that was kind of a common theme that could maybe be a little bit better and go for it.
Yeah, because and it varies like from D3 to D1 level and even professional level for any sport, but you got to have some type of, I mean, for starters, like it's almost like walking into practice. You got to like check your ego at the door, because once you sit down and say if you came off a bad game, I mean, I remember sometimes like whatever performance, I mean, I didn't have too many of them, but when I like that facial expression right there, like biting his tongue over there. But when you did, it's like, man, you really got to like put yourself away, and it's gonna suck. It is really gonna suck, like confidence wise. I feel like some people avoid it. Like I've been guilty of it before, just completely like avoiding it for a couple of days. Like I don't want to see this. Like I feel like that's gonna put bad things in my head. Because like another thing I saw too is just, I think just randomly coming across different coaching philosophies is who's the old time Alabama football coach? Not
Bear Bryant.
Yeah, Bear Bryant. I saw something where he mentioned all I did in our national championship season was show my guys positive film, and that's it. Like that's all he did. And you see, you hear other coaches like, we gotta break down this. Like, what do we do wrong from this game? That's another wide variety thing, just like the roles in any sport. It's how can you truly perceive something, and even when you're taking a couple of knocks on the chin, like talking to the players and players receiving that information and seeing it from like a third party person, like that third eye of view. It's like, oh wow, I really messed this play up, or man, I just did not look like myself that day.
Yeah, and it's normally all about finding the little thing that led to a bigger web of problems. Like that's usually like when it's negative film, it's typically, and we do positive, we do negative, we do it
Yeah.
all.
Yep.
We don't
Oh
discriminate
yeah. Oh
what
yeah.
film we're showing. And I think usually when it's negative stuff, it's like it's either just effort, which I think if you're not trying, you need to be held accountable for that. That's pretty simple. But a lot of the fixes are, listen, it was just this one little thing that, instead of going off 2 feet here, you tried to go off one, it got stripped off your leg. Now you're out of bounds. The ball's going the other way. Transition three. Not seeing the web of,
Where it all started.
yeah, everything that's impacted from that, I think is usually the most powerful thing. Like if I just show something that's never going to happen again, and it wasn't really the end of the
What's the
deal,
point?
what's the point of now I'm just being a jerk. Now I'm just trying to pick you apart. Like I think a lot of what we try to do in film is understanding the sequence of events, and how can we,
Mm-hmm.
when we're at those pivotal moments, how can we make sure we do the right thing that opens our options to the positive stuff instead of, losing our discipline in that one little moment that then leads to, two or three things. I think that's typically, generally speaking, that's where our focus is, I think.
Yeah, no, definitely. And another thing too, of just from my personal eye of view, like maturing a little bit more is taking the notes too, like taking notes, right, like pen to paper. It's a lot more effective than people think, I feel like. And I mean, taking notes for anything really is crucial because there's so much going on in a season. You got the practice, you got game. Like, how do you really think that you can truly take all this in without putting pen to paper? Because it helps like absorb that information a little bit better. One adjustment that I love that we did this year, like in the classroom, is like, let's get pen to paper and like let's write it down. Let's talk about it.
I forget what I say in film sessions.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I can't imagine being a 19-year-old kid sitting there for sometimes an hour and a half watching film and trying to thinking you're going to remember all of it. Like
Yeah.
I forget things we covered. If a kid asked me a question, like I might forget exactly how I answered that. Like it's crazy to think that I didn't do that as a player. Like it's one of those things that's like what on earth was I doing?
Yeah, I'll say like I wish someone just told me, hey man, like maybe in the classroom a little bit too. Maybe take a couple more notes. Like it really does wonders. Like it does. I'm not gonna get all like diving deep into the brain, but anytime I did it, I look back on it, I'm like, oh, like I remember when I like learned that, and I now put that to paper.
Seeing it, hearing it, writing it, and then going back and reading it, like you got
A
a pretty
lot
good
better.
shot at remembering just seeing it and hearing it. Especially when you're hearing it, it might not be, in the best tone. It might not be, the
Mm-hmm.
thing that's going to make, it's not like a professor's up there talking to you. Like it might be in a tone that maybe rattles you a little bit. And now you got to focus on, what they're saying. It's hard. It's hard. So
Yeah. No, that's a big thing. Like emotions. Don't let the emotions of just learning from your mistake, like at that point in time, it's going to be completely different when you're, maybe by yourself now and taking that in. Like, okay, let's review that a little bit for a couple minutes and take a step back from that. So awesome. Okay, so now a different side of the game. I had my guy Ref Rob on a couple months ago. Gave me great insight. I was chomping at the bit because I wanted to pride myself on getting a basketball coach in, getting a baseball coach in, getting a soccer player and coach in, like just try to get every aspect from different sports. And I'm like, well, there's another side to the game that is very involved. That's the refs and the umps. So when I had Ref Rob on, I had like, a list, like a laundry list full of questions and how he perceived things. And just from his videos too, like I was, his interactions with the players were very very cool and like very personable. Like he quoted like he's not a cookie cutter type of guy. Like he's gonna call it what it is, and like they're not robots and they're not they're normal people. Just like you talk to any like authority in a situation, like talking to anyone else, like cops and all that. So what I wanted to ask you, like we talked about before, of you coming from the background you come from. I'll start with the player side of things again, since we're already there. As a player, any sport, whatever level, what is the best way to communicate with referees and or umpires?
yeah, I mean, honestly, I think all my answers on this topic are pretty similar, coach and player. And I think
Yep.
it all kind of boils down to understand the rules and understand that they're people. If usually when you go wrong and someone gets a tackle or whatever, it's usually because they lost sight of those two things. Um, and with that, like ask questions. I think if you're a person who's reffing a game and you come over to me and I say that was terrible, that's a foul. What do you say to that? Okay, I disagree. Thanks.
Yep,
What do you,
sounds good.
there's
Sounds good,
no,
Coach. Thanks.
what's going to come of that? Like there is nothing you're going to gain from that besides, the satisfaction of you getting that off your chest that you told that guy he sucks. Like that's not going to change anything. So ask questions, like understand why it was a foul. Like I think as much as it's going to help you learn a little bit, it's also like that's a good communication. That's a good way to do it, and don't do it with a whiny, posture. Don't be like, what did I do? Like ask the question, like, where did I get him? What was that? Find out that, and kind of with both of those things, I guess, use their language, learn the rule book, learn the actual calls. Like I hear over the back all the time in basketball. It's like the number one thing you hear. There's no such thing as an over the back foul. There's a push, there's a
The
displacement
hold.
foul. There's no
Yeah.
such thing as over the back. So don't use that terminology. Call it a push from behind. Show them a little bit that you know what you're talking about and you understand the rules. And the other I would say is this is more from a college coaching or maybe even high school coaching, but know who you're talking to. Know the officials. Understand who they are, what their background is. That's going to help you a lot. Understanding in our games, we're probably going to have one really experienced guy that knows what he's doing and he's going to run the show. We're going to get one guy that's probably going to be at our level for a couple years and then hopefully, progresses. And then we're probably going to get someone who's either new or, hasn't progressed a ton and they're not going to make all of the right calls. So understand who's who on the crew, who to talk to. A lot of times in our games, we might have a really experienced guy and then like a first year official. And if I start screaming at the first year official for something, not only am I making an enemy out of him, but
He's
now
rattled.
I'm taking off the person who was told like, hey, I'm putting you on a game with this young guy, take care of him or whatever. Now I'm not accomplishing anything. I'm just making enemies on both sides, and generally just understand that no one's trying to screw you. They don't care. They could care less who wins. The Binghamton Maine Enwell basketball game today. They and I'm not saying those two are fan bases.
Yeah.
Those is just an example. No one cares. No one cares who wins our game versus St. John Fisher.
Nothing's going to change their lives.
They don't care. I think the don'ts. Number one, body language, like particularly from coaches. If the guy makes a call on the other side of the floor and you do and we all do it. Like
Hands.
I do it too. 6'6", and it's everyone
You'll
sees
see it. You'll see it.
you'll see it. And I think trying to limit like that's one that's just like you're just making that guy, you're putting him on an island. What's he gonna?
You try. Yeah, look bad.
Exactly. I'm just making him look bad. The hand wave, that's a bad one. That's like an acceptable middle finger. That's
No, that's an
basically
automatic tech. That's been an
yeah,
automatic tech now.
that's an automatic tech. And I'd say the other don't, more from a coach's standpoint, is, and I've learned this the hard way probably, is don't motion the foul. If you're talking to a guy about a call, don't motion it, because then when he calls it, the other ref is like, he just told you to call it. It's like, keep that conversation between,
Yeah.
it happened to us this year. There was, we were playing zone and the guy in the middle kept, hooking the middle of our zone and kind of grabbing him.
He was.
And the ref is right in front of me and I'm doing it and I'm pointing at the guy and he blows the whistle and it was a foul. But now the other coach is like, he just bullied you into that. And I just put that ref in a really
And now it's going to be a back and forth the whole time. He's telling you to do this, and now you're calling it. Okay, now I'm going to tell you to do this, and you're calling it.
Instantly apologize the next possession because I put him in a really tough situation.
That's a good point. Really good point.
I guess the last thing that this is a player or a coach, move on quickly and don't exaggerate. Like, don't argue something that happened 4 possessions ago, and don't exaggerate. Like, if you're, if there's a guy that's in the paint for 3 seconds, don't say he's been in there for 15 seconds. Because then it's easy for the ref to say he hasn't been in there for 15 seconds. And then, now you're don't exaggerate, speak their language. Don't speak in hyperbole. We're all guilty of it. I've done it for sure. but it doesn't help your case. It's like if you're filing a lawsuit, you're going to be pretty on point with what you're accusing them of. Don't accuse them of something that's outlandish. That's not what happened.
Yeah.
Make your argument reasonable and don't exaggerate.
Yeah, because I mean, and going back to the players too, there's a reason why you're the speaking representative as a team captain. Like, there's a reason why you meet before the game, talk with the refs. Like, hey, here's what's going on. Like, I'm going to go to you. Or like, you're basically the main guys that can talk with me, have good. Like, anyone can obviously talk to them, but like, those are the ones on the court too. That you got to be held responsible for, because yeah, when you talk about as well, like the gestures and making them look bad, I think that's like the biggest thing that can any ref that can they'll be sensitive about, just because like that is that's them, what they do for a profession on the line now, of you're going out your way to make them look bad from a call, especially that having that come from a player. That's even worse. Like, obviously coaches get a whole lot more leeway. Like, you got to understand that as a player as well.
Right. And I think that's the part of like understanding they're human is if you're a player, do you want your coach to scream across the court at you every single time you make a mistake? Like,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm a coach, do I want my athletic director 2 rows behind me screaming at me every time I make a mistake? Like, no. So like have conversations with them, keep it between you. Like, at least at the college level, from a coach's standpoint, not as a player standpoint, from a coach's standpoint, if we're right here and no one can hear our conversation, I can pretty much say anything. Like there can be cursing, there can be, I can say whatever
Yeah.
because if no one, I'm not embarrassing the guy, I'm not whatever. Like he's going to accept it. And the second you open up anyone else to that conversation, what else is he? How else is
Their backs are figuratively against the wall there.
right? Because if I let the coach tell me I suck from across the court, now I know that I'm just letting everyone tell me I suck from across the court.
Yeah,
At
yeah,
some
yeah, yeah.
point you've got to keep it in check. Um, not saying it's ever a good thing to necessarily get heated, but make sure it's right here. Don't open anyone else into that conversation. That's not going to make your situation any better.
Yeah, and that's how you think about it. That's damn near any interaction. It's not just that's just daily life. It all goes back to just daily life of, like, making a person look bad, and letting the whole world know what the hell they did, instead of just like, all right, let's effectively communicate about this.
100%. And make sure when you are having those conversations, you know the rules. I think that's the number. Like
Yeah, yeah,
nobody knows the rules, like including myself. If I took the reffing test right now, I'd fail. And I probably know the rule book better than most coaches and certainly players. Like there's a
yeah,
lot to the rules that I don't think people understand how hard officiating is, and how many rules there are and different rules and changing rules. And um, a lot of those guys are reffing a Division 1 game one day and a Division 3 game the next day. Like it's hard. It's really really hard, and they're really good. Like they're getting 90% of the calls. Like the Division 1 guys, they're getting 96-97% of those right. Like
yeah, yeah,
if anyone else in this gym had their job, it'd be a terrible game. So
yeah,
I think understanding the rules kind of helps you give them that grace a little bit when you understand all that they're trying to do.
yeah. And I want to take away all the obvious answers here, but you talking about like a D1 game Monday, and then they got maybe a D3 game Wednesday or Thursday. Besides the just like the natural talent, the athleticism, etc. What's like the biggest technical adjustments these refs have to make?
I mean, the physicality in the Division 1 games just completely,
On Yeah,
like it's not even the athleticism and how fast they're going, but if we were talking about this with Trevor the other day, like we got to watch Duke and Kansas play in the Elite Eight a bunch of years ago, and Marvin Bagley and what's his name, Azubuike from Kansas.
from Kansas. Yep.
I mean, those guys were just bashing each other, and if that happened in one of our games, like I'd be screaming assault, and it's you. There's so much more physicality that can be let go in one of those games that
Mm,
it's just not it's not the same game to an extent in terms of from a officiating standpoint. There's a level of athleticism and physicality there that's it's got a different set of rules a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of like the unspoken rules a little bit, like what you can and cannot let go, and what the players understand too. Because even like jumping to the next level of NBA, I can only imagine. I almost feel like at a certain point, like even talking with, like Rob about this a little bit, like when you're at the NBA level, if you have to like take like I'm trying to think like what's a funny way to put this, like taking like a law type of class where like you're like a lawyer almost like as a ref to like like getting all these different cases and how you like defend it and everything because like you need an answer to everything in the NBA. I feel like just watching like the games like they're asking the questions on all right what do you get out of that and one that even like the I feel like the one player in the NBA I would almost be frightened by going into a game in regards to being a ref and verbal communication is Chris Paul. I feel like Chris Paul just like it's not even just like yelling at them. It's just like that mental like he's saying some shit that like I feel like that could like lose my confidence as a ref.
Yeah, because he's probably making good points.
Very good point.
I'm not saying he's right, but he knows how to make good points within an argument.
Yeah.
Even lawyers who defend the guilty guy, they know how to make good points.
They make good points. Yeah, like
They
the rest
make a lot of good points out there, and I think those are the best players or coaches are the ones who understand what happened and understand how to plead their case by making good points. It's not. Don't make it just an objective. No, that wasn't a foul. Like understand that's like being a lawyer saying he didn't murder him. Okay, have some evidence. Use some of the terminology that show like maybe he's right. Like I thought there was some displacement. My guy got pushed out, he got displaced, and then you're right, he did bang him into the chest once he got to the ball.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he had that position first. Understanding how to kind of make some good points is important without going in a full on argument.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's also another thing too that I always appreciate, like coming from college classes, just general communication. Is I took like a college writing class before, and the class was mainly based about debate slash argument and how to listen and how to communicate, and that all goes back to encounterments with referees. It's just like you need to.
There's really good refs out there that aren't the best play callers, and there's really good play callers out there that aren't the best officials. There's guys who you can put them on a game with two coaches who hate each other and are going to scream and whatever. He might not make the best calls, but he's going to handle the situation. He's going to have a smile on his face. He's going to take it from both sides. He's going to keep them apart, and we're going to have a good game. The best of the best are the ones who can do both. And you're going to have guys who call really good games, but you hate the answers they give you.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't give you answers. They're not great communicators.
Huh?
Yeah. And that's where understanding who you're talking to kind of matters.
Yeah, and that's why I think Ref Rob's content is where it's at right now, is because the way he handles it. Okay, yeah, you might have missed that, but like, hey, coach, like, and then like the way it's talked about, smile on the face, like you mentioned, and way it goes, it's like okay, at least you can handle a couple of tough plays down the stretch and how they go. So awesome. I know you did as a coach, but how many techs did you get as a player?
I don't think I really got any techs. I think I got a double tech maybe in high school.
All right, just a little physicality.
Yeah, a little physicality. I want to say someone touched up Sperber. But I don't think as a player I ever got one. Definitely not in college. I know that because I probably would have sat the rest of the season. I wasn't good enough to get those. So no, I didn't.
In the family household, were there ever like once you got into the season type of talks, like, hey, by the way, like let's not get a technical foul or else it's not going to be a happy household?
No, I mean it was kind of my dad didn't have much of a leg to stand on because I've watched him get technicals on multiple occasions as a coach. He didn't really have much of a leg to stand on in terms of it.
Okay.
But it wasn't a big problem. I've never been a big temper guy, so it was always. And honestly, part of it is I grew up with a bunch of refs, kind of.
You just understand, yeah. You just
I understood a lot of it, and I knew a lot of them. That was playing CYO in high school ball. Like I knew most of those guys a little bit. Like I'm not going to go nuclear on them.
Yeah, yeah, because it's almost like a it's like a weird like athletic like especially like once you've been in the same like league or conference for a little bit. It's like a weird like athletic fraternity. Like you got to understand how to treat each other because you're gonna see those guys more than once. Like we talk about who's on our game. Like we know about them. We've had them a couple games. Like all right, you're starting to understand like how to treat each other, and they know like how to ref certain players or manage the coaches. It's kind of the same thing.
It happens on both sides. Like I'll if I get a roughing assignment, and I don't know one or two of the guys. Like I'm texting some of the guys I know. Hey, do you know this guy?
Yeah, it's gonna be a feel.
Give me a feel. I know he's not going to tell me he sucks. Like he's no one's gonna, but he can give you a little bit of all right. Like I know who that is, and they do it the same way. Like if they're going to play, my brother will tell, hey, do you know this guy? Whatever. Like they want to know what they're walking into,
It's
and
scouting report.
you're if you're a jerk to half the refs, that other half's gonna know too. Like it's a pretty small community.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not why you should treat people the right way. You
Correct.
should
Correct.
do it for the right reason. But if you're someone who doesn't care about that, and understand that at some point it's gonna be a pain in the butt.
Yeah. And last question about refs because I love going down this wormhole, but we'll say it just the high level D1 or NBA, WNBA. Do you think just like the players, just like the coaches, post game interviews, do you think the referee should be a part of that?
No, no. I think it's when you're in a position like that. I think it needs to be very you know separate from state. That
You've already done it.
it's everything can be broken down in hindsight, and I think it just opens up. They get criticized enough, like I know for a fact that when they make a bad call before they get back to the locker room, their phone's ringing from their assigner and they're hearing about it and there's repercussions. So like it might not be in the public eye, but those guys are held accountable.
They're
That's not
already getting that.
it's it's
That's
it's
like one job. The accountability's all the way up here.
it's not like they leave there and they just forget about it like it's a fifth grade CYO game. Like at that level, those guys are fully aware of the good calls they made, the poor calls they made, where they need to be better. I don't think them answering makes it any better. They're being held accountable.
Yeah, yeah, they've already got enough of it. Yeah, because God, I can only imagine you already talk about the even like social media amount of that talk, and it's actually funny because when you talked about the vulnerability of messing up, I'm back and forth about how when there's public statements made from the just reffing organization in general saying like if there's like a serious I'm trying to think of like a serious controversial call the past couple of years like LeBron against the Celtics when he went up for a layup to like a game winner before it went to overtime. He got hit on the arm pretty good. And after the game, the ref association basically came out and said, yes, LeBron James. And then they gave the technical rundown about what happened on the play and they should have called it. That's like one thing. It's like, do we even need to do they deserve an answer? Does the public eye really deserve an answer? Like maybe you can talk to the coaches about it. But that's one vulnerability piece because I agreed with you on the vulnerability piece for coaching and everything. But does a public eye really need that?
Probably not. And
Like
yeah, it doesn't change anything. They don't change the score. And also it's not like, Steve Kerr gets to say, hey, I shouldn't have ran that. Do we put 12 seconds left on the clock and I get to cut?
yeah.
No, like so it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant, but I'm not Adam Silver. He probably knows far better than I do. But
Yeah.
no, I'm against any sort of, not that I'm just trying to protect refs, but I just think they have their own form of accountability, and they're not stars. A good official, you don't even know who it is. That's their goal.
Yeah.
That's their goal going into it. So I think trying to keep it that way is probably the smartest.
Yeah. And I actually, since we're in April, it was only about 10 days ago, I got hit pretty hard on an April Fool's joke before. one of my favorite shows of all time, PTI, Pardon the Interruption. I think one of the first things they did too, I'll never forget this, like sitting on the couch watching with my dad, and very leading thing. It was like a low major D1 game. At the time, I didn't know schools too well. And they mentioned that one of the players was playing with 6 fouls. And they said, hey, Mike Smith was playing this game at the 2-minute mark. He picked up his 6 fouls. So starting on tomorrow, they're going to pick back up right where they left since he was disqualified from the game and should have played the last 2 minutes. They're going to start the game at the 2-minute mark tomorrow. And I'm looking at my dad, and I'm like, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen on TV, like this and that. And then just like the confetti, all of that going around. They're like, oh, happy April Fools, everyone. And I'm like,
that'll scar a young man.
yeah, like, oh, they got me. I'm not going to get nailed on April Fool's joke before. Awesome. So all right, I'm gonna get out the reffing wormhole now. It's fun to talk about. The interactions are cool. But yeah, so last thing, my bonus segment, the one-on-one. There's another just highly debatable topic. I definitely want to hear your side of things, and there's one thing definitely that I know we haven't been able to like talk about yet. But Jay Billis is pretty high on this, and obviously his name is just more and more, as it should, is progressively getting bigger and bigger, and people are trusting the word. Talking about what should be done next at the NCAA, specifically the Division I level, and maybe even through the whole chain, really, just because to keep it consistent, I guess. But him talking about the why is there 2 halves? Why are we not doing 4 quarters? So that's just like one example, I guess. What's one thing for you, just the NCAA, what you see as a player, coach now, and what the changes have been that should be adjusted and that could help the game, help the sport?
I don't think it's as much of a I think it would grow the game. I'm just a big fan of the rule. I love the Euro League, like when the ball goes on the rim, defense can knock it off.
So do you think it should just be universal at this point?
I do.
Like
And I
every
think,
league, like all, everything.
yeah, and in our game, I think we've rightfully so taken the charge out of the game. It's a dangerous play. It was the only defense I could play. I get it, but I also fully know how dangerous it is for both involved. So I think we're right as a sport for taking that out, but I think it's hurt some of like the rim protection, and I think there's something that needs to be done. I think to kind of bring that element back, and I'm just a big fan of if that ball goes up on the rim, someone can go knock it off and play on.
Okay. Yeah. No, I mean, they'll definitely, and it also, I mean, it helps too, just like from the eye of view, from those angles too, like just like determining the calls, it makes it a lot easier, like for those shot blockers.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that could also another hot topic. It prevents all of the instant replays that have to happen now of just the goaltending is not goaltending, obstruction, whatever. And yeah, that's the other thing that like I thought of too, especially during March Madness. Do you think these coaches are strategically, even if they know that ref made the right call, it was off White's foot? Do you think these coaches are just going like this so they can get a free timeout?
Well, I think part of it is that, but also I think there's calls that they're going to look at regardless, whether the coach.
There are regardless calls. Yep.
They're going to it regardless. I think that's just coach's way of saying we think we're right.
Yeah.
It's like
And
when
players too in the league. Yeah.
The football and everyone points the other way. Like you don't really know. So I think some of it's that, but yeah, I'm sure there's an element of like let's review this just so we can talk. But I think all in all, coaches they don't love how choppy it is at the end of games, but this is what we asked for. We wanted review. We wanted to get
we wanted perfection, basically.
You can't get it both ways.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, the 1-on-1 perfected yet again. You made both free throws. You won the game right there. You completed the bonus round. But yeah, that right there, that concludes season 1. I knew there was going to be some fireworks. Had to make it happen. We've been talking about it for a while. You're busting my chops on it. I'm like, listen, we got to make this an important episode. I can't just have you on a random one. We made it happen, man. And it was a great way to conclude the beginning of this. Hopefully it's a long journey, but great way to dive into this populated pool of podcasting. Hopefully get it out there, and some important stuff, man. It's stuff we see every day and don't get to talk about enough. So it's cool to I know we have plenty of conversations ourselves, but do it publicly. I think we have mic'd up conversations all the time. We'd create a book together.
We'll see about a book together. That seems like a lot more time together. But no, I mean, what an honor to be on here. On a serious note, like we always tell our guys, like, be yourself. Like, don't try to be someone else or whatever. And seeing what you're doing with D&G Wellness and also, podcast is cool to see. It's opened my eyes to some elements, and I'm sure any of the kids watching, and hopefully some young coaches watching as well, pick some things up. I learn a lot more about the mental side from you than you do from me. So no, it's good to see. Keep it up. Excited for season 2.
Sir, appreciate that. It's a growing field, man. It's a growing field, and hopefully we can keep it rolling. Casey Mcgraw, ladies and gentlemen, wrapping it up, episode 20. Thanks, Coach.
Thank you.
Thank you to everyone who has taken the time out of their day to give the Pump Podcast a listen. Please give us a follow on Instagram or TikTok at pump_pod. You can also tune in on our YouTube or Spotify channels. Last but not least, if you have any questions, comments, concerns on any of the episodes or future episodes coming up, please email harringtonpump@gmail.com. Once again, thank you for listening and hope you can tune in soon.